There have been, various upcroppings of UAP activity that have occurred since then. And one particular incident has been what appears to be a repeatable string of sightings that started in 2022 at Langley Air Force Base. And Langley Air Force Base is almost like a sister base to the base I was operating out of. Instead of F-18s, they have F-22s. They're about 100 miles from D.C., and they actually provide quick response, fighter response to D.C. should there be any type of threat. And it's about 80 miles north of the airspace that we were operating in when we had our incidents. And starting in 2022, they had a number of incursions of unknown objects over the base at very low altitude that were about car-sized. They hovered over the base doing altitude changes of about 1,000 feet before departing back over the ocean. It was about 5 of them. It lasted for about 2 hours. And it lasted for about a handful of days. 2023, during the same kind of period of time, right before Christmas, the same thing happened again. This time there were 2 kind of forms of objects. One that appeared to be more spherical, another one that was more flattened, if you will, or disc-shaped. The spherical objects came up the bay again, executed a flight at about 3,000 feet. The individual objects were separated by about half a mile or a mile. There's photos of all this. And they proceeded up the bay, stopped at Langley Air Force Base for about an hour and a half, conducted some type of operation, and then proceeded in that counterclockwise back over the water and exited. The second group, which operated at about treetop level, as it was described, went in a clockwise fashion. Instead of stopping at the base, they stopped at the nuclear facility that was on the west side of the bay for about the same amount of time before departing. There was a local eyewitness who contacted us. We ended up, routing that witness to the FBI. And actually, recently, he was on 60 Minutes last weekend talking about the New Jersey drone incidents. Butner. So that was 2023. 2024 comes around. Law enforcement is ready. They have systems set up at the base in order to see what happens this time. And again, during the exact same period of time, about 5 weeks before Christmas, we have a major outcropping of sightings. But this time, not just over Langley. It seemed to be much more prevalent further north into New Jersey, but also at military bases around the country. There were base shutdowns in Ohio, in Texas, in California, in Massachusetts, in New York, New Jersey, of course, Pennsylvania. I believe there's one in Florida. And ultimately, I believe it was Air Force recently, about a month ago, testified that there were 350 what they're labeling as drones, but of unknown type, unknown mission, and unknown operator that operated over military bases in 2024 alone. And that says nothing about the reports that were cited over civilian airspace and things of that nature. So, it was a bit theoretical trying to explain the concept of having, existing in a world where there's a lot of small form factor vehicles, and how are we going to understand what's a threat, what's not, and what's something else perhaps. That was the argument I was making back in, 2018, and these incidents of New Jersey, I think, really pointed to the fact that, exemplified for people just how disturbing and how problematic it can be if there are a lot of unidentified objects operating in our airspace. What we did run into in that incident was a lot of legislative and policy restrictions that allowed for the further investigation of that. There were companies, counter unmanned aerial system companies, that had very sophisticated detection systems that could have been employed on the ground, but no one within the federal government could figure out whose authority it was to give them permission. Airspace was federal, but it was, they're operating off of local land. Are they using active systems? State and local law enforcement didn't feel like they had the jurisdiction. So it was a real mess. And they're still interested in getting out there, and we're actually collaborating with them to get out there, hopefully in the next month, to see if we can utilize those systems. But it has died down significantly. And of course, the aviation safety piece is critical outside of national security. I mean, we were nearly hitting these objects. We have regular sightings over LaGuardia, near New York, going back almost 5 years at this point, very consistent. Some very near aircraft between 2,000 and 8,000 feet. There's other areas as well. Portland Airport has consistent sightings around it, as well as others. So, I mean, it's not always about thinking that one of these are going to hit a pilot, whatever they are, or hit an aircraft, something like that. It's about how the pilot reacts to what they are seeing when they're not expecting something to be there. And in the gray space where there's uncertainty, there's still a lot of risk of a safety incident occurring. But when there's a very powerful experience where a guy's seeing something within 500 feet of his 737 that he's never seen in his life or imagined he would, that's a different type of risk that's now in that cockpit that needs to be addressed through educating pilots that this is a common occurrence as it seems now. So I'm going to just stop. I'm going to shut up now. I've been talking for like 30 minutes. And maybe we can, ping the room with a little bit of question, and then, I'm sure those will delve us into different areas. So maybe it's a good time to do that. Does anyone have a burning question right now? Go ahead. So the gimbal is one thing that's important to remember when watching the gimbal or the Go Fast video. You see the black and white video. That is an infrared camera system, right? So it's in an infrared mode. And so what you're seeing is a temperature differential between the pixels. And so in that video, the object is kind of dish-shaped and almost pointy, in the middle on each end. I can't say with uncertainty that corresponds to the physical, makeup of the object, right? That could be the IR energy that's being emanated across, the skin of the vehicle in such a manner that makes it hard for my sensor to see. Now that would be beyond the signal management capabilities of modern systems to be able to mask your IR signature to that degree and disperse that energy in that manner. I will say that, and that's something we're very keen on as fighter pilots. It's a very important concept for us. Signal management in general, right? So that would be a very significant capability. So I'll have to say, the aura around it, it's most likely blooming from the camera or something like that, but it's really hard to say because we're just seeing temperature gradient, right, and what that corresponds to.
Being that it's like lighter, is it like, would you say the differential is like positive or negative, or?
It depends on when the video you watch it, because I think they switch between white hot and black hot mode, or maybe I'm misremembering, but we often switch between that so that white is the whiter it is, the hotter it is. But if something, I don't interpret that signal as it truly having like a physical aura around it. There could be a temperature differential that's around it because of the way the air is moving or something like that, but I don't know. Yeah.